My boyfriend ghosted me after 2 years, and I sent his nudes to his entire family. The words echo in my mind like a mantra now, cold and sharp, but 3 months ago they would have been unthinkable. 3 months ago, I was still the girl who believed in forever, who thought love meant something more than a convenient arrangement until someone better came along. I'm staring at my phone screen, the cursor blinking in the empty text field, and my hands are trembling. Not from fear, that died weeks ago, but from the electric anticipation of justice finally being served. The screenshots are already loaded, waiting. His contact list sits open in another tab, every family member carefully cataloged. His mother, his father, his sister who always looked at me like I wasn't good enough for her precious baby brother, his grandmother who posts Bible verses on Facebook every morning. They're all about to see exactly what kind of man they raised. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The story doesn't start with revenge. It starts with the slow, suffocating realization that everything you thought you knew about your life was built on lies. It was a Tuesday when my world imploded. I remember because I'd been excited about surprising him with dinner, had spent my lunch break picking out ingredients for his favorite pasta dish. The October air was crisp, leaves crunching under my feet as I walked to his apartment with grocery bags cutting into my palms. I had my own key, had for 8 months, but I knocked anyway because I wanted to see his face when he opened the door. He didn't answer. His car was in the parking lot, that dented blue Honda with the bumper sticker from our trip to the coast last summer. The lights were on in his apartment. I could hear the TV through the thin walls, some action movie he'd probably seen a dozen times. I knocked again, harder this time, my knuckles stinging against the wood. Nothing. The key felt heavy in my hand as I slid it into the lock. Maybe he was in the shower, I told myself. Maybe he had headphones on, lost in one of his video games. Maybe there was a perfectly reasonable explanation for why he wasn't answering when his girlfriend of 2 years was standing outside his door with groceries and a smile. The door swung open to reveal his living room, empty except for the flickering glow of the television. Pizza boxes stacked on the coffee table, beer bottles scattered across the floor. The smell hit me first. Stale food, unwashed clothes, something else I couldn't identify. It was the smell of someone who'd given up on basic human dignity. I called his name, my voice echoing in the small space. The bedroom door was closed, and I could hear movement behind it. Soft sounds, whispers. My stomach clenched with a premonition I didn't want to acknowledge. I should have left. Should have backed out of that apartment and never returned. Should have saved myself the image that would burn itself into my retinas and replay in my dreams for months. But I was still the girl who believed in reasonable explanations, who thought 2 years of shared memories and whispered promises meant something. The bedroom door opened with a soft click. She was beautiful in a way that made my chest constrict with immediate, devastating comparison. Long, dark hair tumbled over shoulders that were bare except for the sheet she clutched to her chest. Her lips were swollen, her cheeks flushed with the unmistakable glow of satisfaction. She looked at me with wide eyes that held not guilt but surprise, as if I were the intruder in this scenario. Behind her, I could see him scrambling to pull on boxers, his face cycling through expressions like a broken slideshow. Shock, guilt, anger, resignation. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, but no words came out. What could he possibly say? What combination of syllables could explain away the scene laid out before me like a crime scene? The grocery bags fell from my hands, cans rolling across the hardwood floor with hollow, echoing sounds. Tomatoes splattered against the wall, leaving red stains that looked like blood. I watched it all happen as if from a great distance, my mind disconnecting from my body in the way it does when trauma is too fresh to process. She said something. I think it was my name, spoken like a question. But the sound was muffled, like I was underwater. Everything felt surreal, like I was watching a movie of my own life instead of living it. The key slipped from my numb fingers and clattered to the floor. I turned and walked out without a word. The next few days blur together in a haze of crying jags and empty wine bottles. I called in sick to work, ignored the messages from friends asking if I was okay. My phone buzzed constantly with texts from him, each one more desperate than the last. I deleted them without reading, but their presence on my lock screen felt like tiny knives, each notification a fresh wound. I found myself staring at the ceiling of my apartment, trying to make sense of what had happened. 2 years. 2 years of planning a future together, of him meeting my parents, of me doing his laundry and cooking his meals and believing that we were building something real. 2 years of him saying he loved me, of late-night conversations about marriage and kids and growing old together. All of it had been a lie. The rational part of my brain knew I should be angry, should be screaming and throwing things and demanding answers. But anger felt too clean, too simple for the complexity of what I was feeling. This was bigger than anger. It was a complete rewriting of my own history, a retroactive poisoning of every happy memory we'd shared. Had he been cheating the whole time? Was I just the convenient girlfriend while he waited for someone better to come along? Were there others before her? How many times had I been the fool, smiling and cooking dinner while he laughed about me with his friends? The questions circled my mind like vultures, each one picking at the carcass of my self-worth. It was on day 5 that I made a decision that would change everything. I was lying in bed, surrounded by tissues and empty ice cream containers, when my phone buzzed with another message from him. This time, instead of deleting it, I opened it. "Please let me explain. It's not what you think." The audacity of those words hit me like a physical blow. Not what I think? I had walked in on him in bed with another woman. What exactly was I supposed to think? That they were conducting a scientific experiment? That she had fainted and he was performing mouth-to-mouth resuscitation? I scrolled up through our message history, months of conversations that now felt like evidence in a trial. Sweet good morning texts that he'd probably sent to her too. Photos of meals we'd shared, inside jokes that weren't as special as I'd thought, plans for a future that had never been real. And then I saw them. Mixed in with the innocent messages were photos he'd sent me late at night, when he was feeling lonely or wanted to remind me what I was missing. Intimate photos that I'd treasured as symbols of our connection, proof that he trusted me with his most vulnerable self. My finger hovered over the screen, and for the first time in 5 days, I felt something other than grief. I felt power. The idea came to me slowly, like dawn breaking over a landscape. He had humiliated me, made me feel small and worthless and naive. He had taken 2 years of my life and thrown them away like garbage. He had looked me in the eye and lied over and over while I believed every word. But I had something he didn't know I had, something that could level the playing field. I took a screenshot of each photo, my hands steady for the first time in days. Then I opened his Instagram, scrolling through his family members with methodical precision. His mother, who had always been cold to me but posted endlessly about her perfect son. His father, who had shaken my hand at Christmas dinner and told me I was good for his boy. His sister, who had never missed an opportunity to make me feel inferior. They all thought they knew him. They all believed in the version of himself he presented to the world, the responsible son, the loving brother, the man who would never hurt a woman who had given him everything. I was going to show them who he really was. The planning phase began that night. I couldn't just send the photos impulsively. That would be messy, emotional, the kind of revenge that could backfire. No, this needed to be surgical, precise, devastating. I spent hours researching, reading about digital forensics and how to protect myself legally. I learned about VPNs and anonymous email accounts, about timing and psychological impact. I studied his family's social media profiles like a detective building a case, learning their routines, their vulnerabilities, their pressure points. His mother posted daily inspirational quotes at 7 a.m. sharp. His father checked Facebook during his lunch break at the construction site. His sister was most active on Instagram in the evenings, usually posting selfies with her boyfriend or photos of her dinner. I learned their schedules, their habits, their digital footprints. I became an expert in the architecture of his family's online presence, mapping out the most effective way to detonate my bomb. The anonymous email account took me 3 different VPNs to set up properly. I chose the name carefully, something that would seem credible but untraceable. I crafted the message with the same precision I used to use for work presentations, each word chosen for maximum impact. "I think you should know what kind of person your son-brother really is," I wrote. These photos were sent to his girlfriend of 2 years while he was cheating on her with multiple women. "I thought you deserved to know the truth about who you're raising, supporting." I attached the photos, not all of them, but enough to make the point. Enough to shatter the illusion of the good boy they all believed in. But even as I prepared my digital arsenal, doubt crept in during the quiet moments. Was I becoming someone I didn't recognize? The girl who had walked into that apartment 5 days ago would have been horrified by what I was planning. She would have called it cruel, vindictive, wrong. But that girl was gone. She had died in that bedroom, suffocated by the weight of betrayal and lies. What remained was someone harder, sharper, more honest about the way the world actually worked. Still, I waited. I wanted to be sure. I wanted to give him a chance to make this right, to prove that maybe, somehow, there was a reasonable explanation for what I'd seen. On day 7, he showed up at my apartment. I heard his footsteps in the hallway, the familiar pattern of his gait that I'd memorized over months of listening for his arrival. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I forced myself to breathe slowly. I had the power now. I controlled this narrative. He knocked softly, tentatively. I could picture him standing there, probably holding flowers or some other pathetic token of apology. The boy who had never had to face real consequences for his actions, who had coasted through life on charm and good looks, and the assumption that everyone would always forgive him. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. He looked terrible, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, clothes wrinkled like he'd slept in them. For a moment I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. He started talking immediately, words tumbling out in a rush. Explanations, excuses, justifications. It didn't mean anything. She was just a mistake. He was sorry, so sorry. It would never happen again. He loved me, only me. Please, could we just talk about this? I listened to his performance with the detached interest of a scientist observing a specimen. Every word confirmed what I already knew. He was exactly who I thought he was. Selfish, cowardly, incapable of taking real responsibility for his actions. When he finished his monologue, I looked him in the eye and said the only thing that mattered. We're done. He tried to argue, to negotiate, to bargain, but I was already closing the door, already moving forward with my plans. He had made his choice when he brought another woman into our bed. Now I was making mine. That night, I sat in my apartment with my laptop open, the cursor hovering over the send button. The emails were ready, the photos attached, the recipient selected. All I had to do was click. I thought about mercy. I thought about forgiveness. I thought about being the bigger person, about taking the high road, about all the platitudes people throw around when they've never had their heart ripped out by someone they trusted. Then I thought about him lying in bed with her, laughing about how easy it was to fool me. I thought about the 2 years of my life he'd stolen, the future he'd destroyed, the trust he'd shattered. I thought about how he'd looked at me in that doorway, not with remorse but with annoyance, like I was an inconvenience in his perfect little deception. I clicked send. The emails went out simultaneously, a coordinated strike across his family's digital landscape. I imagined them opening their phones over morning coffee, during lunch breaks, while scrolling through social media before bed. I imagined their faces changing as they processed what they were seeing, the cognitive dissonance of reconciling the son they knew with the man in the photos. The first response came within an hour, his mother calling him repeatedly. I know because he started calling me, his voice frantic in the voicemails I didn't answer. Please, he said, please tell me you didn't do what I think you did. We can work this out. We can fix this. But there was no fixing this. There was no going back to the girl who believed in forever, who thought love meant something more than convenience. That girl had died in his bedroom, and what remained was someone who understood that actions have consequences, even if those consequences are delivered by someone you underestimated. The calls kept coming. His sister, screaming about how I was crazy, how I was sick, how I had ruined everything. His father, confused and hurt, asking why I would do such a thing. His mother, alternating between rage and pleading, demanding I take it back, demanding I fix what I'd broken. But I hadn't broken anything. I'd just revealed what was already there, hidden beneath the surface of their perfect family narrative. I'd shown them the truth about who they'd raised, who they'd protected, who they'd made excuses for. The social media fallout was swift and brutal. His sister posted a long rant about psycho exes and how some people couldn't handle being dumped. His mother shared articles about forgiveness and moving on. His father stayed silent, but I could see him gradually removing photos of his son from his profile. And him? He disappeared, deleted his social media accounts, stopped answering calls, went completely dark. The boy who had been so confident in his ability to charm his way out of any situation had finally encountered a consequence he couldn't smooth talk his way around. I should have felt victorious. I should have felt satisfied, complete, revenged. Instead, I felt empty. The anger that had sustained me through the planning phase was gone, replaced by a hollow ache that reminded me of what I'd lost. Not him. I was done grieving for him. But I'd lost something else in the process. Some essential part of myself that believed in taking the high road, in being better than the people who hurt you. I'd become someone who could destroy a person's family relationships with a few mouse clicks, someone who could inflict psychological warfare with surgical precision. The question that haunted me in the weeks that followed wasn't whether he deserved it. He did. The question was whether I deserved to become the kind of person who could do it. I threw myself into work, into friendships, into rebuilding the life he'd torn apart. I dated other people, better people, men who treated me with respect and honesty. I learned to trust again, slowly, carefully, like someone learning to walk after a devastating injury. But late at night, when I was alone with my thoughts, I would sometimes wonder about him, where he was, what he was doing, whether he'd learned anything from the experience, whether he ever thought about the girl who had loved him enough to cook his favorite meals and plan a future together, who had believed in him right up until the moment she couldn't anymore. I wondered if he understood now what he'd thrown away, if he realized that the photos weren't the real punishment. The real punishment was losing someone who had genuinely cared about him, who had seen the best in him even when he couldn't see it himself. The girl who had walked into his apartment that Tuesday afternoon would have been horrified by what I became. She would have called it wrong, cruel, disproportionate. But she had never been betrayed by someone she trusted completely. She had never felt the specific kind of devastation that comes from realizing that everything you thought you knew about your life was built on lies. I'm not proud of what I did, but I'm not ashamed of it either. In a world where women are expected to suffer in silence, to take betrayal with grace, to always be the bigger person while men face no consequences for their actions, I chose a different path. I chose to fight back. The story doesn't end with his humiliation or my revenge. It ends with me 6 months later, stronger and wiser and more careful with my heart. It ends with the understanding that sometimes the person who hurts you most is the one who teaches you the most about yourself. I learned that I'm not the forgiving type. I'm not the woman who turns the other cheek or takes the high road when someone destroys my life. I'm the woman who fights back, who demands consequences, who refuses to be a victim. And maybe that's not the person I thought I was. Maybe that's not the person I wanted to be. But it's the person I became, forged in the fire of betrayal and tempered by the need for justice. I sent his nudes to his entire family because he ghosted me after 2 years, and I'd do it again.